Thanks for tuning in to Proline TV, the Our Football Network. We are live, and anybody watching live, if you care to participate, you can do that. Just pop in your questions, your comments. We welcome that. Anybody that's watching on demand, you could still enter the comment section of the video and let us know what's on your mind, and we will answer those as well. You also want to take a look at the video part where the description area has all the links where you can check out my next guest, who has been covering Oklahoma State for us here on the Our Football Network for several years, Mr. Scott Wright from the Oklahoman. And also, you still doing the Cowboys Chronicles?
Still got it going.
Okay. How often are you doing those?
Weekly during the season.
Weekly during the season. Okay. And then off season, what does that mean? Sporadically, or how does that work?
Kind of as needed during the off season.
Okay. All right. So there you go. Links in the description for all that good stuff. Follow Scott and the Oklahoma State Cowboys football team. All right, Scott. So let's start off by talking about, I think, an interesting topic, because we just did a Big 12 preview show on our Playbook ATS podcast show a few days ago. Last week, we're going over all the conferences. And so obviously we're into the Oklahoma State deal. And the big topic was, more than anything, was Mike Gundy. It was what's going on there. And matter of fact, I even saw in one of our coffee club emails that come out daily over at Playbook that one of the viewers, one of the customers from the newsletter asked a question regarding Gundy, and I can't believe that he's had all the success here. He has one bad season, and everybody wants to get rid of him. So we have to start with that. So what's going on with Gundy? Is his job safe? What kind of a season does this need to be or not need to be for Gundy to keep his job?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question because his job is somewhat safe. It's not as safe as it was. The reason that he's still here is because he had an ironclad contract with a massive buyout over $25 million. And if it hadn't been for that, they might have had the momentum to get rid of him last December. Now, that said, the athletic department and the school president at the time, there's been a change of president since then, but the school president at the time were very much on his side. However, the Board of Regents at Oklahoma State were a little bit split. There was a strong faction within the Board of Regents that were very anti-Gundy, and they didn't directly make it known in terms of what they said. But they were very public in their work to try to get him out, and it led to this big ordeal early December of last year that resulted in his contract being renegotiated. The buyout came down. He had a perpetual 5-year deal, so every January they added another year to the contract. It was a very odd contract, essentially a lifetime contract. They took away the perpetual add-on, so he's now on a traditional 4-year deal that that he'll actually have to renegotiate at some point. So a lot of changes for him contractually that give the school and the administrators more power should they decide they want to make a change. Now, that said, that comes to this team. Now, he got rid of his entire offensive and defensive coaching staffs, new coordinators all the way down. It's the most coaching turnover I've seen without a head coaching change. Wow. I'm not just talking about teams that I've covered. I'm talking about me as a college football fan for my entire lifetime. So big turnover on the coaching staff, big turnover on the roster, 60 new guys coming in between portal and high school signees. So that's what I'm curious to see, how Gundy is measured this year by the administration in terms of everything that he did to try to get this program back on track. It's a very different feel around this program right now. Gundy is still the same guy. He hasn't changed, but so many new faces. Obviously, everything is a little bit different. So we'll see. It definitely needs to be better than last year. You can't go winless in Big 12 and survive this again. But is a bowl game enough to keep his job? Probably so. If things feel right, if the vibes around the program are good. If not, it might take more than that.
Yeah, because it's not looking good on paper. No. That's going to happen, which would give him which you would believe put him in a good standing if he could get this team to a bowl game. So I know that's not what Oklahoma State fans want to hear. Is just, oh, that's it. We care about just going to a bowl game now. But I guess it's all up to the people in charge of whether or not they are ready to kind of, it's almost like starting over again where, okay, we'll give you another chance. And we're not saying you got to win a Big 12 championship, but let's just get that momentum going in the right direction. And if we can do that, whether it's a bowl game or a very promising 5-win season, which by the way would beat the 4-win total. It's 4.5. We'll go over a little bit later on. So that might count for something. And then this just shows you, though, that it's just a very different time that we're dealing with now in college football with all the transfers and everything like that. We'll get into some of the key guys that left the program, too, and how that might hurt them. But as you said, I mean, I'm looking at the RLAD's depth chart, and we're going to go over the transfers. But just an amazing amount of players in the orange. All of these orange players are all transfers. I mean, it takes up most of the roster. And it's not like they have a whole bunch of top guys coming back either. So I would really believe that if he could get this team to 5 wins, good win or two, or definitely a bowl game with this roster, then he's doing something, not special, but he's doing something worthy of another season.
Yeah, I would agree. And, I mean, you look at that big orange chunk right there in the middle of that. And I know we'll get into position stuff later, but that big orange chunk of the entire offensive line is going to be transfers. There might be a couple of those guys that might compete for some jobs, but the majority of the 2 deep even is going to be transfers in. So a whole new offensive line. And that was a big issue last year, but they've got to get that fixed. That's going to be really the key to this season.
Okay, let's get into the spring game or whatever happened in spring, because I know these games, how much they've changed and whether you play them or not. But I guess the bottom line is how did the spring go? I guess the quarterback battle, that's probably the big thing that everybody is following as far as the football program, because they really need somebody to step up.
Yeah, they absolutely do, and it was an interesting battle because they came in. They had 3 returning guys from last season, and brought in one more, Hoss Haney, who had been at TCU with new offensive coordinator Doug Meacham. He comes up from TCU to join it, make it a 4-man battle, and Haney and Zane Flores were the only 2 to survive that. Garrett Rangel, who took over as the starter mid-season last year and then broke his collarbone and was lost for the year. He decided to transfer out after spring, as did Milwaukee Smith, who started a couple of games late in the year, when Alan Bowman had become ineffective. So, and he left as well. They both found other, Power 4 landing spots and are going to try to continue their careers. But that left 2 guys behind, and neither of them has thrown a pass in a college game. Zane Flores, the redshirt sophomore, actually getting a year back for an ankle injury that required surgery last year. So he's eventually going to be classified as a redshirt freshman right now, and still have 4 years of eligibility left, but hasn't played a game. Redshirted as a true freshman, and then had the injury last year. Hoss Haney played in 4 games at TCU last year, but never threw a pass. He rushed the ball 15 times. And that was really it. That's what he really brings to the table, is his rushing ability. We don't know a lot about him as a thrower, other than some film that you see from him in high school when he looked good. But that wasn't the main thing that he did well. Whereas Flores is more of your pocket passer type of guy,
Right.
Good athlete, but not the shifty type of runner that Hoss is. And so 2 different types of quarterbacks. They're going to have to decide what they want to do there. Spring was good for those guys, and the fact that 2 other guys left opens up more reps for these guys in fall camp. Although you did lose a lot of experience in what went out. So, overall, a productive spring for the quarterback position. I think they seem to both really enjoy playing for Doug Meacham and Kevin Johns, the new quarterbacks coach. So they've got a good foundation to build from. But at the end of the day, you just don't know what kind of player you've got, because neither one of them, like I said, have thrown a pass in a college game.
Yeah, you've seen a lot of quarterbacks come and go, especially. I mean, this program has had some really good ones.
Mhm.
for quite a while. So this is definitely a little bit of a curveball, even though Bowman, and it kind of did start last year, because even though Bowman was a veteran quarterback, it was like he was one of the situations that I remember even talking to you about. It was like, this guy's still around. I mean, how many years
Right.
can he be playing college ball for? But
Yeah.
still, at least you had a veteran. So
Mhm.
now, but sometimes, the younger quarterback can end up better than the veteran. We know that. So you've seen a lot of these quarterbacks, especially with the young ones. How do you think, say, a Flores, who I don't know, again, I haven't seen these guys play, but maybe I would guess Flores has a tiny bit of an advantage since he was here. Do you think Flores is the leader at this point? Do you think Flores, or do you think either one of these guys, from what you've seen, has the capability of maybe even surprising some people and being a little bit better than people think?
Yeah, I think they both have some natural talent. It's a matter of just figuring out which one is going to fit what Doug Meacham wants to do. You look at back at his past as an offensive coordinator, some of his years, particularly at TCU, when he had guys like Trayvon Boykin, Kenny Hill, even a young Max Duggan when he was coming up. Before he was not coordinating there in 23 or 22 when they went to the title game, but he was on the staff there. But you look at his best years, he's had a mobile quarterback. So
Yeah.
that might give Haney a little bit of an edge. And like I said, he was recruited by Meacham to TCU. That said, you look at the typical style that Mike Gundy likes to have in his offense, there's going to be some throwing the ball down the field, and that is where you look more back at Zane as the guy who could step in and be your more traditional pocket passer. He's got a big frame, 6'4", 215, strong arm, so he looks the part of a quarterback, absolutely. And we've seen that he can throw the ball around a good amount. So I think ultimately I do agree with you. I think Zane is the guy that has the edge, but there's some factors that could that could throw this into a different kind of situation. For instance, if your offensive line struggles,
Yeah.
maybe you need your small, fast guy back there to go create and
Yep.
do some things. So we'll see what happens.
Now we might wind up seeing both of these kids.
Right.
It's very, very
Exactly.
possible. Yeah. Okay. So what else? Any other big stories? Any other players that played better than anybody thought? Obviously, with all this movement, that was probably one thing that was important, was to get everybody acclimated to the system and their teammates. Were there any injuries? Were there any suspensions? What were some of the big stories this spring?
Yeah, a couple of injuries that came out. One was deep at the running back position. Jaden Allen Hendricks, a redshirt freshman. They went into the portal and got Freddie Brock from Georgia State to help shore things up there. And they really like what they've got at running back with now 5 guys, even without Hendricks. So. But then probably the most important injury that happened was at receiver, where Talon Shetron was lost with a knee injury, and most likely maybe he gets back late in the season. Might not play at all this year. So that took out some height and some real size that they've got at that position. Shetron, just a good sized kid, 6'2", almost up in the 200-pound range, and has shown that he can make plays down the field. That left them without much size at the receiver position. They had to hit the portal hard to go get some guys like Christian Fitzpatrick is one that's had a lot of buzz. Now, he just showed up in June. We haven't seen a ton from him, but had a good year at Marshall last year. 6'4", 220, big kid who can go and play. Cam Abshire is a guy coming up from the D2 level that they're hoping can be an impactful player as well. So. Some different guys like that give them a little bit of height at the outside, plus some returning guys like Trey Griffiths and the guy that I'm personally most fond of, Ayo Shotamide King, who was brought in last year as a walk-on from Snow College, just kind of one of those guys that was a late addition to the roster, but he's 6'3", 6'4", and got a pretty good sized body. So. A guy that was kind of a diamond in the rough that might have a chance to really do something at the outside receiver position.
Anything on defense?
Defense, they stayed pretty healthy, so they're in good shape health wise over there. Nothing.
Okay.
They haven't had any suspension issues or anything like that as well. So they're in pretty good shape over there.
All right. So let's go ahead and talk about recruiting and transfers and such, I guess might be a good time to start, first of all, with transfers. So let's do that. You mentioned some of these receivers. So Davis. Now, Davis is the one that really sticks out because of what he accomplished last year on all divisions,
Yes.
leading in receiving yards. He had, over 1,600. He also added over 100 receptions and 15 touchdowns, but he did come from Division II. At least he is a first-team All-American, leading all divisions in receiving. So whenever you go down there to the lower divisions, that's what you want to see. You want to see really accomplished players that give them a shot at the higher ranked levels. So I'm assuming Davis is going to have an opportunity to really be an important piece of that receiving core.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement about what he brings. He's an interesting athlete because he was a kid that wanted to be a basketball player all through high school. He's a local kid from Choctaw, which is just outside of Oklahoma City here, and had always been a basketball player. And then finally, his senior year pops up and starts playing football. And just finds that he's got some real natural talent, got some leaping ability that had been valuable for him in basketball. That's become incredibly valuable for him as a receiver because of his ability to go up and get the ball. So he plays much bigger than he's listed at 6 feet and plays much bigger than that. Got a thick body as well. He's up close to 200 pounds now, from what I understand. So a really developing player still. Went to UCO and kind of learned the game and really started to develop and had the incredible year last year and now at Oklahoma State getting even further into the intricacies of what it takes to be a really good receiver. They're very excited about what he does and. A lot of receivers, a lot of transfers at that receiver position.
Yeah, 6.
But he is one of the ones that has generated a lot of excitement.
And you mentioned Fitzpatrick. There's some buzz there. Mm-hmm. So Davis is the obvious one. Is there another one or two guys that you think have a really good chance of being contributors this year? The transfers.
Jalen Lloyd is a guy who's got a lot of speed, and waiting to see how exactly he's able to use that on the field and make sure it transfers. But certainly looks like he's got a unique level of speed. And Sam Jackson was a guy that generated a lot of buzz in the spring as well. Had a long punt return for a touchdown in the spring game and did some other things. So they've got some guys that I got to mention Shamar Rigby. He was one of the first ones that they snagged in this guy that played in just about every game at Purdue as a true freshman last year, had some decent numbers and came over, OSU's new running backs coach, Corey Patterson, was actually coaching receivers at Purdue last year. And so he's very familiar with what Rigby can do. So, and he's another guy that he's a skinnier guy, probably about 185 pounds, but he's got, 6'2", 6'3", and some long arms that might be able to help out there as well. So they've got some guys with some measurables. They've got some guys with some talent. Okay. They just got to kind of put it all together and figure out who is going to be the main guy out there.
And then we take a look at that offensive line. So as you said, it's right there. All 5 maybe transfers. So out of those 5, does 1 or 2 stick out as, these guys are definitely going to start, and they're going to be the ones that are really going to lead this unit?
As far as leading, I don't know exactly, who might step into that role and be that kind of guy, though. Louis Canepa is a guy that I've heard a lot of good things about. Bob Schick, which is listed at right guard there, I think is someone I'm very curious about because he's probably the most experienced of this group. A veteran guy coming over from Virginia Tech, I think is a big physical guy who could help out. Talent-wise, the guy that I'm really intrigued by is the center, Kason Carpenter, just a redshirt sophomore, started every game as a redshirt freshman for Tulsa last year, and he was kind of a little bit of a late bloomer physically, and that kind of hurt his recruiting coming out of high school. But now he's bulked up to around 300 pounds and really looks the part of a big time offensive lineman there in the middle of the line. So
Okay.
really curious about him. And Markel Samuel, another guy that's got a lot of experience at Appalachian State. So a guy that I think could really. Now that said, that left tackle duo there of him and Tyler Brumfield. Brumfield is a junior college transfer, but still a big physical guy who I think could challenge for that starting job there.
But the one that you seem to be a little bit more intrigued with is Carpenter. That sounds like.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I think he's a guy that has really been developing as a college player, and is kind of the kind of guy that the transfer portal is really made for, because he was maybe a little under recruited coming out of high school, but really developed into a big time player.
Okay. And as far as we see, there are 3 transfer tight ends. We see there are a couple transfer running backs. Any of those guys stick out?
At running back, Caleb Hicks was one of the guys. Now they've got a real unique situation at running back, because you've got some veterans, some younger guys, some transfers, all kind of mixing together, and I don't have a feeling about which guy is necessarily the best out of all of those. I feel like Rodney Fields has the highest ceiling and a chance to have a real breakout year. But he hasn't played a ton. He only played in 4 games while redshirting last year. So got to see it on the field. Trent Howland's a big physical dude, transferred from Indiana last year, 6'3", 240, and can really pound it. But Hicks was the guy that probably generated the most buzz in spring. He was at OU and didn't really get a chance to do much down there over 2 seasons. Transfers. He was a 4-star recruit from Northern Texas. Really exciting kid, and got up to Stillwater and got some opportunities and has really looked good. He's a little over 200 pounds, but really well built and runs physically, but also has some elusiveness to him as well. So a really veteran group in terms of what they've got in the older guys, but a really exciting group in terms of what they've got in some of the younger guys.
And is Josh Ford definitely the starter? Will any of these transfers give him a run for his money?
If any one of them do, it would be Oscar Hammond. He's a guy that sort of like we were talking about with Terrell Davis earlier. He actually began his career at UCO as well, and kind of started to blossom into a much better player. Then ended up transferring to North Texas for a year, had a pretty successful season down there, and now is at Oklahoma State. He's another Oklahoma kid from up in the Tulsa area. He's not quite as big as Ford. Ford is the guy that really has the total package. He's got the size and physicality to go be a blocker for you, but also the athleticism and the hands to be a really reliable receiver. So, but Hammond, I think, definitely has some talent, and will probably be that number 2 guy if they go with 2 tight ends, or need a little bit more speed maybe at that position. He's the guy they probably turn to.
All right. Defensively, a lot more transfers here.
It's possible.
Yeah, it's possible we could see as much as 8 transfers that wind up starting in that range. A little bit more, a little bit less. You never know. So, which guys stick out to you? Who are the guys we really need to keep an eye on from the defensive transfers?
There's a couple of guys at the defensive end spots that were really intriguing to me during spring. Kyron Duhan from UTEP had 7 sacks as a true freshman at UTEP last year. Played well against Tennessee in a late season non-conference game for them. He's a guy that I think he's not built like a guy that should be really good at defensive end. He's 6'1", 255, and almost looks more like a fullback out there. But the way he plays off the edge is really impressive. And then Malik Charles is another guy that's coming up from the lower level. He was at West Georgia. This is his 4th different college. He's another guy, like we talked about with Terrell Davis, thought he was a basketball player for years and years and years, and finally gets to senior year of high school and decides that football might be the direction he needs to go. He showed up at 255. He's checking in at about 280 now, so is really taking advantage of the weight room and the training table at Oklahoma State, and is a really uniquely talented athlete. Dad played in the NFL as well, so he's got some genetics there. The linebacker core, I'm very curious about all of those guys. I don't know. I think they've got 3 transfers that could all end up being their best linebacker. I just don't know which one of them it's going to be. Trip White, Brian McCoy, and Brandon Rawls are all very intriguing for different reasons. White was a safety when he first got into college at Ole Miss, and kind of grew into a linebacker role. He's a little smaller than the others, but has really good speed. McCoy is just a veteran guy that's played a lot. He averaged over 100 tackles the last 2 seasons up at Akron, and now comes in and going to try to make a name for himself at a higher level. And then Brandon Rawls from small college, Saginaw State, and going to try to do the same, but 6'2", 240, and really looks the part out there. All very athletic. I don't know who's going to end up being the guy, but they all look like they can play some. And there was another guy that was added late in the spring transfer window, Darius Thomas, who I don't know as much about yet. Obviously, haven't seen him really, but a guy that they're pretty excited about in terms of what he could do. He was playing for Cap Didi, who is the new linebackers coach previously. So when they were together at Western Kentucky, so could help him get a chance to be an impact player there as well.
Okay. And what about the secondary? Because there's a few guys there. I know Davies has some experience. He might be the more experienced guy out of the bunch, but anybody stick out as far as the safety, the DB transfers?
Yeah. So this is probably the most interesting and maybe the most talented in terms of depth position on the field out of those 5 spots there, because you've got some returning guys like Cam Smith at corner, Cameron Epps, David Kabongo, and Landon Cleveland were 2 true freshmen last year that got a lot of playing time at the safety spots. So you've got some guys there, but then you've got guys who came in as transfers who are proven guys and experienced guys like Jalen Davies, like J.K. Johnson, guys that have been at other big programs. A guy that actually was getting a little bit of buzz just from talking to folks down at Big 12 Media Days last week was Eric Fletcher, a transfer that we knew very little about and just showed up in the summer and is already quickly starting to make a name for himself at corner. So
that's Eric Fletcher.
Yeah, ERIC.
We don't have him on there. I guess he's a new one then.
He is. He was a late addition in the spring transfer portal window. Okay. So got some other guys. Cale Smith, another returner who's played a lot in his time at Oklahoma State. So you've got a variety of guys. Zaquan Patterson is the one that I want to make sure I mentioned, because he's another one that came in the summer that was a big time recruit to Miami last year. Played a lot as a true freshman. There's a lot of excitement about what he could do potentially at the safety position. So there's just a lot of talent. Trying to nail down which maybe 10 guys end up in the final 2 deep is really tough to do. But a lot of talent there that they're pretty excited about.
And then I also see, big surprise, I guess if you're going to have a whole bunch of new guys on the team, you might as well add a new punter and a new kicker.
Yes, exactly. I'm very curious to see how they handle the punting. Last year they had 2 guys, and they had Wes Paul was the distance punter. He averaged over 46 yards a punt. He can really boom it. But when they needed some hang time and some directional kicking, they went to Hudson Cock, who has now transferred to Auburn. So we'll see what they do with Chase Berry, who's a guy who got a little bit of experience at UCLA and now will get his chance. We'll see if they use them both or if they want to go with just one guy out of that. And place kicker Gabe Panikowski he won the basically the Groza Award for Division II and below last year at Idaho State is where he was kicking. Perfect 15 of 15 and really impressive season for him. So they're hoping to get something good out of him. And Logan Ward was he's a guy who's done a little bit of everything. He's been a kickoff specialist. He was field goal guy last year. He filled in as a punter a couple of years ago when they had an injury. So he's kind of the Swiss Army knife of this group that can move around and do whatever they might need if somebody falters somewhere.
Okay, so let's now take a look at the recruiting from this upcoming class. Well, the class actually that is already taking place here from 2025. I do not see, I'm just taking a look at rivals. I do not see any 5 or 4 stars. So that's got to be pretty rare for Oklahoma State to come in from a rivals recruiting class without 1 4-star. Tons of 3 stars, though. Any of these incoming freshmen stick out? Do any of these guys? And I'm sure that there's a lot of job opportunities out there with this program. So can any of these true freshmen potentially get in the mix?
Yeah, there were a couple of these guys that were able to enroll early and were on campus. The one that I was really intrigued by in spring was Royal Capel, a receiver he's kind of more of a slot guy, and he might be a little bit blocked by some older guys like Dawan Lofton and Gavin Freeman, who both redshirted last year and are the returning guys there at the slot receiver position. But he was a guy that they were very excited about. A really mature player, really smart player, and is a guy that they feel like might have a chance to work his way into a little bit of playing time this year. Michael Riles at the defensive end position was probably the maybe one of the guys they were most excited about in this recruiting class. A physical, fast guy that they really feel can develop coming off of the edge and be a pretty special player. But obviously, with all the guys that they brought in, it's going to be hard for some of these freshmen to work their way into the lineup. But they do like the class that they got. They were able to add Banks Bowen late in that class as a third string quarterback. That was an important addition. Now they had some inside help there. His dad is Clint Bowen, the former longtime Kansas defensive coordinator, and he's an analyst on the staff this year.
Okay,
Longtime friend with Doug Meacham as well from their time at Kansas together, and so they were able to bring him in. But he was a talented player, a 3-star recruit who had initially signed with Tulsa and ended up coming to Oklahoma State to play alongside his dad.
So right now it looks like we only have 2 freshmen on the roster, but you would say put in Royal Capel as well.
Yeah, I think he can squeeze himself in somewhere in that slot receiver mix. Though it's like I said, it's going to be tough because there are some veterans there ahead of him. Okay,
so tell me overall. Is there anything out of whack with the depth chart that we have right here? Because, Tucker, who does these depth charts, boy, he has his hands full with this one. Yeah, do a lot of research. So do you see any players that you think might maybe have a better chance? Maybe it's their third string or second string. You think that they probably should come into the fall as first string? Or do you think most of this looks okay?
Maybe the only thing that stands out a little bit to me, Austin Kowecki on the offensive line. He can play both guard positions. I could see him winning one of those jobs.
Okay.
I would probably see him and Bob Schick maybe being the favorites for the 2 guard positions. Hard to say which would be right and left because Schick can play both and so can Kowecki. So be a matter of figuring out comfort levels for them there. But for the most part, no, I see a lot of accurate stuff on here.
And same thing on defense.
Defense as well. Yeah, defense I think is going to be a lot of rotation because they got so many new guys and are going to be kind of bouncing some guys around, doing some different things. But for the most part, Jaleel Johnson might be a guy that's a little farther up than a third teamer. But overall, I would say he's not too far off of from where you got him. He's a veteran guy that I think can really be an impact player as well.
Okay. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be talking with every single analyst for all of these teams in the FBS, and you've been around a long time, and I know a lot of this is still relatively new with the transfers and all that. But just from your experience, because it sounds like, for the most part, even though we don't have a ton of these blue chip transfers, like guys who have, going to cost a lot of money. There doesn't seem to be a lot of those guys, but between the recruiting and definitely the transfers, there seems to be a nice, it seems to be a nice deep group of talent. And as you were saying before, that's just now a matter of whether or not they can be coached up and they could take that next step. Do you think that from what you see, that there should be more optimism regarding the influx of transfers than pessimism?
I tend to say yes, but at the same time, it's The amount of unknown about this team, it's hard to take that step back and say, oh yeah, there's plenty of reason to be excited about these guys. There is reason for excitement because a lot of these guys are proven talented players. Like I said, there's not a bunch of superstars. This isn't a class that they went out and a transfer class they went out and spend $30 million on.
Yeah.
But they're more invested in NIL than ever before, which everybody has to be. But that's a really important step for Oklahoma State. So there absolutely is reason for excitement. They've got a coaching staff that they're happy with and excited about. Todd Grantham as a defensive coordinator, a guy that's had success, in the NFL and in the SEC. More importantly, so he's a guy that has this defense, has kind of a new vibe around this defense, and especially with recruiting, they haven't. They have no fear. There have been assistants at Oklahoma State in the past who might look at some 4 stars from different places, or a 5-star guy even here and there, and say, well, we just don't. He's not going to come to Stillwater, and not pursue him the way that this current staff is really going after guys. So it's definitely a little bit of a culture shock getting to know some of these new guys and seeing how different things feel around practice. And but Gundy is still at the core, and it still kind of all feeds off of him. So there absolutely is reason for some optimism, but if things don't go well early, that optimism falls apart real fast with a team like this.
Yeah, it sounds like it's one of those deals that could go either way, and it could be better than people think as long as they develop these kids the proper way. So even though the sky is not falling as crazy as some fans or analysts might believe, which maybe it is, but there's a little hope. There's possibility that this team, especially with the staff, like you said, and that's the thing, because Gundy has been around here for a long time for a reason, because he knows how to coach. And I'm sure nobody's more motivated than he is to make sure that they rebound the season. So I think this is one of those things that fans would want to stay tuned and definitely check those links to follow you, Scott, because I would guess right around the fall and all the practices, you're going to learn an awful lot from these guys. And maybe that's where you're going to probably feel a little bit better or maybe a little bit worse.
Yeah, absolutely. There's 32 guys on this roster that just arrived at the beginning of June. I mean, some of the guys that we're talking about on the front line of this depth chart are guys that weren't even here for spring ball. Terrell Davis, Bob Schick, guys like that are guys that are going to be impact players. And maybe we learn they're not ready for those roles yet. Maybe we learn they're better than we expected. But yeah, there's going to be a lot learned in early August about this team and just what kind of team they've got, what direction they're going to be able to go with it. So it's a fascinating time here. Even Gundy was talking about it at Big 12 Media Days last week. He says, normally you get to this point in mid-July, he's ready to go on his last vacation of the summer. And normally he's thinking, no, I've got my 2 deep set, probably know who my quarterback is right now. Not a great idea who his quarterback is. And in his mind, he said probably 8 positions he doesn't know who his starter is right now. So it's a time unlike any other that I've ever covered at Oklahoma State.
And that could be fun, especially if things go your way. That's what coaching's all about. It's about coaching these guys up and seeing the fruits of your labor develop into something that people aren't expecting. Do you are there any players that you could say from the holdovers where you can say that this guy is a potential breakout candidate on either side of the ball?
I'll go back to Rodney Fields at running back. He's a guy, like I said, only played 4 games last year, but he's not a huge guy. I think they've got him listed like 5'9", 195 right now. So not huge, but he takes a lot of hits and handles contact well. And then he's got breakaway speed, got some shiftiness to him. If anybody is going to break out of that running back group, there's a good chance it ends up being just a committee approach. But if anybody's going to break out, I think he's the guy with the best shot there. Okay. I think Josh Ford at tight end is a guy that has a chance to really take that next step. He was playing as a true freshman last year and was really learning on the fly a lot. So he really looks the part right now. He was down at Big 12 Media Days. They took him down there, which is a significant step. So you look at a couple of those guys like that on offense.
Okay.
And,
how about that kid at wide receiver that you said?
Io Shotomite King, I think, is
yeah.
another one. He got had a little bit of an injury issue late in spring, but should be fine and doing fine now. But yes, I think he's a guy who is another one that is sort of like Terrell Davis. Kind of a late bloomer in terms of realizing his talent. I think that he is a guy that has a chance to be an impact player over there. On the defensive side, Iman Oates is a guy that just he's 310 pounder whose motor just never stops and is really fun to watch. He's one of my favorite guys to talk to on the team. That doesn't help him on the field at all, but he's a really talented player in the middle there and very exciting to watch there. David Kabongo is a guy who came in and played some as a true freshman last year. And in particular, fans that want to get an idea of him, go Google his name and Cam Skataboo. There's a clip of him taking on Skataboo at the line of scrimmage last year that Skataboo remembers it. That's okay. All I'll say. So right. That was a very important play in the development of his young career. So he's a guy that I think there's a lot of excitement about. Okay. And a guy that's a little bit farther down the depth chart right now that I could see making a push and rising somewhere is Armstrong Nodum, defensive end. He's really might be heading toward defensive tackle. He's up to at least around 280 at this point, and maybe bigger. But as soon as he arrived last year as a true freshman, they started talking about just how physical he was and how tough he is. Now he ended up having a knee injury, had to redshirt. Otherwise, you would have seen him on the field some last year. Now he's coming back from that and doing good, and physically very impressive kid that we're just gonna have to see what he can do on the field.
Okay, and then let's wrap up with the schedule. We told you that the win total is, believe it or not, just 4.5 for Oklahoma State. I'm not sure if that's ever been 4.5 since Mike Gundy's been the head coach.
Probably, maybe his first year in 2005.
Maybe. So I don't know if that says you should jump on it or not, but let's take a look at the schedule. Of course, you got the Cupcake week 1, but wow, what a difference from week 1 to week 2 to Oregon.
Yeah,
at Eugene, and for a team that's trying to come together. I wonder when you have a game. Normally, you have that first game. And you want to get guys off by halftime and just put the backups in. But I wonder, Gundy might just be like, hey, we got to play everybody all the way to the end. I need to see all of these guys getting ready for Oregon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can't. It's like you need to take advantage of the opportunity, but you really can't mess around and can't be kind of experimenting with different things.
No,
you've got to treat this like a real game, which obviously it is, but you've got to treat it differently than a typical first week Cupcake.
Do we know anything about UT Martin, by the way? Whether or not
very little. No, okay. It's a good program from what I understand. OSU had a transfer who had played there previously and really liked it, but I don't know a ton about their on-field status right now. But yeah, you've got to be ready to, it's a Thursday game, so they get a couple extra days to prepare before heading up to Oregon. But I mean, that's going to be some big boy football up there in Eugene.
Yeah. And then Tulsa at home, which that's a game if you are trying to put together a season better than people think that you need to win. Mm-hmm. So, and then all of a sudden here comes Big 12 play. What do you think about the schedule? Do you think they have a good schedule, a tough schedule, an average schedule?
I'd say a little tougher than average. It's they've got some road games that are going to be a little bit tricky. They got the Arizona game there. Houston is I think a program on the rise. Same with Cincinnati, but they get both of them at home. Those are definitely winnable games. Lubbock is always a tough place to play, and I think Texas Tech is going to be really good. Kansas, same thing. Kansas State, a lot of people picking them to be the winner of the Big 12. At Central Florida, obviously, coaching change out there and all of that. Last time Oklahoma State went out there, it was miserably bad back in the 2023 season when they were actually playing really well. And Ollie Gordon was on his his emergent run to the Doak Walker Award. They go out there and lose. I think it was 45-3. I know UCF had 45, but it was
Wow.
It was ugly in the rain out there
Okay.
in Orlando, and then finish up with Iowa State at home on Thanksgiving weekend, which will, Iowa State could be playing for a spot in the Big 12 title game by that point. So, yeah, there's some tricky games along the way here, but definitely some winnable ones as well that could get them. I think up in that 6-win range and go into a bowl. And you string a couple wins together and get some momentum. Maybe you go get number 7 or number 8. We'll see what they can do, but overall, it's a very competitive schedule, and that's what you kind of expect in this league right now, because it's just a very balanced league from top to bottom, really.
Yeah, but yeah, obviously you got to win the Tulsa game, no question about that. If
Right.
you can win that game and get off to a 2-1 start, I think those home games with Houston and Central Florida, I think those are important to win. Because even though you respect both programs, those are winnable games for a team like Oklahoma State being at home. So if you could take care of the business against those types of teams, then really you just need the one big upset in order to put yourself in a position where you might be able to go bowling with another win. So, I mean, what do you think? I know, is it too early for you? I'm assuming you definitely want to take a look at what goes on at camp before you have a final prediction.
Sure.
But what is your gut telling you that this season, or it might be just too early?
No, I mean, sitting here in mid-July, I think that this team has the talent to go win some of those games like Houston and Cincinnati at home. Those are the type of games that you've got to go and take care of business on your home field. And so I think, I mean, if I was a betting man, I'd probably be going ahead and jumping on the over on that 4.5 right now. I like I said, I don't know if 6 wins is good enough for Mike Gundy, but I think that they're capable of getting back to that point and getting this program going back in the right direction. But then it all comes down to health and all those sorts of things. But here's one thing about Mike Gundy: you go back and look throughout his career, he always tends to overachieve when the least is expected of him. The years that they think the program's going to be down end up being some of his best years throughout his career.
I like to hear that. That's a nice one. That's a little tidbit that I think, like you said, if you're a gambling man out there, and I know there are quite a bit of those that watch this channel here at Proline TV, at least, not at our lads, but at Proline TV at least, that would be of interest to them, because yes, that makes a lot of sense. And again, there are some winnable games out there. Maybe you probably get an email or a text from me at some point before the season begins, just going, hey, how those quarterbacks looking?
Oh yeah,
how the team's looking. But of course, I'll just first of all, before I bother you, I'll take a look, of course, at your previews, because I'm assuming you're going to have all that kind of stuff, right? Season previews, predictions, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, all that stuff starting here in just a couple of weeks. I'll start rolling out some of those kinds of things.
And that's the thing that I think is really going to dictate what we think this team is going to do this season. So, Scott, I appreciate your time as always. Let's see if Mike Gundy can do just that. Put some little surprise season together and get this team to a bowl, which would be nice. It seems to be a really nice guy, and he wouldn't be if he'd be around that long at the program. So there's a lot of people that are backing him and hoping that he has a nice season and they can continue, because he must be he's got to be one of the top 2 or 3 tenured head coaches in the entire FBS, I would guess.
Yeah, I want to say he and Kyle Whittingham are tied for second right now, I think.
Okay,
is
behind Iowa.
Yeah, Kirk Ferentz at Iowa.
Got it. All right. So again, Scott, appreciate your time as always, and look forward to hopefully talking to you again during the season if things go well.
Absolutely. Always enjoy it, man.